The Batman one, which we'll just get into it right away.
I'm excited. Batman, I used to think Batman was my favorite superhero.
Yep. And this is one of those things where I love it really is the COVID narrative of all these things. So basically the article is from Cinema Blend. I'm trying to do better about shouting out the articles when we do this. I struggle with that.
I'll remind you.
Thank you. It says DC fans are worried about Robert Pattinson's The Batman, are worried... face of COVID-19 setback. See, some of the can you tell me as a writer if this is a copy editor mistake or if I'm reading this wrong? Okay. So it says DC fans are worried Robert Pattinson's the Batman will face a COVID-19 related setback. Me it feels like it should say DC fans are worried that Robert Pattinson's the Batman will face a COVID-19 related setback. Is it just
there's a grammatical term for this where you omit the word that, like it could be there. It's not technically wrong, but
okay.
I will look it up and get back to you. I have a vivid memory of learning this in high school English.
Okay, so
it's where you can omit the word, but it seems more the word is kind of implied by the sentence.
Okay, so I'm looking at it from a speaker's perspective. They're looking at it from a writer's perspective.
Mm-hmm. Sometimes some of the stuff that it doesn't necessarily need to be true for internet journalism, but it was true, especially when you were doing print and placing everything on the page so it didn't get lost. They made decisions to cut some words so headlines would fit or whatever would fit.
That makes perfect sense.
Yep. So some news writing standards have stuff like that.
So we've learned something new today. I'm
Yep.
excited.
This reminds me a lot of AP English. I don't remember what happened in that class. I just passed what it would be.
I loved AP English. I loved AP Lang and AP Lit, and then I got a degree in English.
Well, I took regular English and regular Lit.
Wait, did you take GATE English or CP?
I have no idea what those mean.
That means either.
I don't know what that means.
Oh, our school offered, so...
It's probably different by school district.
Yeah, so they offered 3 different levels, freshman and sophomore year, but then junior and senior year, you only had CP, so college prep, or AP, which is, what does AP stand for again?
Advanced placement.
Which is it's such a monopoly. One day we'll have a whole rant about the AP SAT system, the monopoly that exists on that.
We'll have an educational podcast that would be, you look like she's like, I love it already.
Livid about it. It's just a scam, but more thoughts on that later. Okay, so how is Batman?
So it says it's been a wild few years for us all, and the film industry still continues to be affected by COVID-19 related setbacks. Movies are back in theaters, but a number of major projects have underperformed, seemingly as a result of moviegoers' nerves related to the Omicron variant. I don't know about that.
Got a little Omi over there? Okay?
So could the Batman be delayed again? Here's what Warner Brothers exec thinks. There's a ton of excitement surrounding Matt Reeves' The Batman, thanks to an A-list cast and striking trailers, but the movie's been a long time coming and was delayed a full year as a result of the pandemic, with fans worrying about another delay. Warner Media, I always still want to call them Warner Brothers. It's Warner Media now. There's no brothers anymore. Jason Kilar recently addressed these concerns. We're certainly paying attention to everything going on with Omicron. We feel good about the date right now. We're going to watch it day by day. You have to assume that, even stuff, the example that I bet you they give farther down here is that the movie Morbius got pushed back.
That was last time I was on, we talked about that.
Yes, and some people have listed Omicron, but what I'm finding is that is literally the go-to excuse now for everything, like Hollywood is doing right now.
I give it all the time. Like if someone tries to make plans with me, I'm like, COVID. Who even knows?
Omicron. I can't do it. So it's like, to me, it's like if they want to get out of anything now, they don't have to give it. They don't have to give actual reasons. They can just cite COVID as the reason. Right. We're going to talk about that later when we talk about the award shows and stuff, because that's another one that's using that as an excuse.
It's interesting because it makes it so, if the film doesn't perform as well as maybe projected to producers or whatever, whoever invested in them, it can be like, but COVID, who even knows what happens? But on the other hand, we've had COVID for almost 2 years. Yep. I know that we have a new variant out, but to a certain extent,
what's the new one? There's a new one.
Are you adapting or no?
There's a new one now. It's like,
well, they had the original, then they call Alpha, then they had Delta, then for a
Deltacron
minute,
or something.
Then for a minute they had the Lambda variant, and that sort of died away.
That one was kind of like the redheaded stepchild.
We were real scared about it, and then we were like, just kidding.
That one's like the redheaded stepchild of variants.
But
Nobody
I wonder
really
if
cares
it'll
about
come
that
back.
one.
Yeah,
You think
and
so?
then there's been a crossover between, I guess, Omicron and the flu.
Somebody needs to make like a show about these guys, the variants.
Well, one of my favorite board games of all times is Pandemic.
Okay,
I feel like we
there
just
you go.
could make
I think
an
we have that.
official COVID pandemic. Oh, we should play it
I
because
think we got
Yeah,
it.
we have it downstairs. You know that 2 shelves nearby the TV? All the board games are there. They're all organized by size.
We should have a board game night. I love playing COVID with my older brother, who was an intelligence officer in the Marine Corps, because he gets very like, okay, we got to do this and strategic. And this whole pandemic has been fascinating because he is extremely logical, and also the way COVID information is presented is so illogical. I almost feel bad for these producers who are trying to get this movie out, because they're like, look,
the longer it sits on the
could
shelf,
come.
the worse it does.
Right. It could come, but it may not, but we're not sure. And COVID could affect anyone along the line. Any new Kanye West is launching a collection. He has a creative collection with Gap, and they are collaborating with Balenciaga. And reading the
Who
press
he's dressing Julia Fox in.
and he used to dress Kim K in.
I know.
But anyways, I just covered this for the site. Like, they put out this statement, and anyone that covered it was like, it's supposed to come in June 2022, barring any issues because of COVID. Like, everything is default COVID.
But then you could like say you just have issues with the production and the designs don't come the way you
COVID.
want. COVID. Say that somebody is asking to be paid more and you just want to wait them out so that they can't renegotiate a contract. COVID. Everything can be COVID now. It's
Right.
it's literally it's the dog ate my homework of when nobody buys it, but but you can't technically prove that it's not true.
I don't care if Batman is delayed. I mean, I think I said to you a second ago, like, I used to think Batman was one of my favorite superheroes. I love Dark Knight. I don't really know that much about Robert Pattinson, but I would love to see a study on how this inevitability of things not being certain that we now live in, how much it affects people's interest in movies. Like, do you need to warn us that it may not come out because of COVID, or do we kind of already know and don't care? Like, this is the reality we live in.
It's become like a monopoly because the only movies that do well are ones with so much cultural relevance. Like the Spider-Man didn't frickin' suffer for this. If anything, Spider-Man succeeded because literally nothing else came out for the last. Are you okay?
No.
So we take a medical emergency.
Medical emergency.
I'm okay.
She's all right.
I'm okay. Water went down the wrong pipe because I'm like trying to answer and like drink water at the same time. Yeah, this is how I die. This is the episode I actually die in.
So, like, the West Side Story was always going to fail. I don't care what they say. West Side Story was always going to fail.
No.
The 355, I was actually fairly excited for it at the beginning, and then they changed the marketing and made it weirdly not weirdly, predictably feminist. Overtly feminist. And then they're like, why did these not live up to expectations? Oh, Omicron. No. You just didn't make a movie worth seeing.
Yeah.
So the only ones that will get people out into the theaters, because there are people that are still worried about it, but not so worried that they won't go see the new Spider-Man or the new Batman movie, but they're not going to go see, Joe Schmo B movie.
Yeah, you're right. If you're legitimately worried about COVID for whatever reason, you don't feel like the precautions of a vaccine and the mask are enough and social distancing, like I assume it has to be a movie you just can't resist.
Yeah,
seeing
you
in
literally.
theater.
That's
And
exactly.
I
it.
understood, like, Spider-Man did really well. I think that hit. You're right. There's not really anything else that I remember. I went to see it and it was like I wouldn't go see anything else. I'm not a huge moviegoer, anyways. But the other one that I thought, and you may know more about this than me, the Ghostbusters movie.
Yeah.
That did well for its budget.
And that one came out around Thanksgiving. Spider-Man came out around December, when it's getting colder. You're maybe visiting people. Like, you need something that'll hit across a bunch of age groups. Like, I could come up with a million reasons why that did well. And I feel like we have to ask ourselves, is it laziness to say, your movie might not come out on time? I don't care if your movie doesn't come out on time, but if it doesn't perform well, don't just blame COVID anymore. Like, reevaluate what content you're putting out.
But they love the built-in excuse, the built-in excuse for it. The worst part is first of all, I don't think this movie will be delayed. I think the fear that's going on right now is also a lot connected to like winter and people are just in general sicker, and that feeds the anxiety. Morbius got delayed because some people say pandemic. I say it's because they're restructuring the movie to move everything into the into Sony's timeline, so they don't have to share with Marvel anymore. But in general, it says, well, the film's, let's see, it's Jason Kilar's comments to Puck are sure to relieve the countless comic book fans out there who are eager to see Matt Reeves' take on Gotham City and the Batman. While it's no guarantee that the situation won't change in the future, it certainly sounds like the powers that be at Warner Brothers, see, they call it Warner Brothers too, want to see the movie hit theaters sooner rather than later. Like I said, every day that film sits on the shelf done, it loses money. It costs them more because they have to remarket, they have to re-advertise, they have to all the promotion has to go back. They have to send the actors back out to do press junkets again. Like every moment that thing sits on the shelf, Black Widow lost a ton of money because it's sad. It literally was like the first movie to get delayed because of the pandemic in its initial form. Like we're talking like March of 2020. Like right when it was getting more serious as far as like government involvement and stuff.
Do you think that it's like worth these movie production teams and companies rethinking their traditional model? Like, do you think that they are an industry that isn't adapting to the reality that COVID presents a level of uncertainty?
The streaming side of it has adapted, meaning that stuff that's coming out streaming, smaller budgets, hopefully better written stories, though that's very rarely ever the case, I find.
But a theater debut is important to certain metrics, right? They measure like, oh, opening weekend it made this much.
Yes, also, and it's advertising.
And for some like award shows, I know we'll probably talk about more of this later, but you need to have a theater debut to qualify, right? I
don't know about that, but somebody would have to check in on that. That's possibly.
Netflix made a Coen's brother like Western. It was actually like a series of short films.
But I think they've changed that since. Somebody would have Miracle. If you could like, could you see if theaters, if a movie needs a theater release to be eligible for award shows? At least for the Oscars.
I don't think so, because you remember when Disney released a lot of their movies through like VHSs, like.
Yeah, but those weren't. But those weren't nominated for awards.
Okay. So the question, can you rephrase it?
So if does a movie have to have a theater release to be eligible for Oscar consideration? Because they submit their movies for Oscar contention, right? I don't know if it needs a theater release. I know that they release them in theaters around the same time every year, all of the Oscar bait movies, like West Side Story, or the recent one from Will Smith, the one about
King something.
Yeah, King Richard. Yeah, so like all those movies tend to come out at the same time every year, but it says right here, it says, while major blockbusters and superhero flicks have continued to take a halt at the box office, other projects like West Side Story and the 355 failed to live up to their money-making potential. There was no money-making potential in the 355, not with the way it was marketed. It just looks Hollywood astroturfed up there, like 40-year-old women as spies works, I guess. But in general, like I think what they underestimate, and we're going to talk about this later in the Sandra Bullock thing, is like they make these movies and then they say to men, it's not for you, when they're like, this is kind of ridiculous, it doesn't really make sense. But then they don't realize that women don't necessarily need to go see other women play spy movies. They like good looking men in spy movies.
Well, and also like spy movies are similar to a lot of the superhero movies in that they're sort of action based. There's a lot of like combat, things like that, which I'm not against, but like if a superhero movie which has those things, it's just not technically about spies, is doing well, why would you release another thing that audience is already taken? It makes sense to me to be like, okay, well, who isn't getting a movie? Maybe we need a romantic comedy. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
and those are problematic nowadays.
I don't care if they're problematic. They'll probably make you money. I mean, if you're producing, I know spy and superhero are different. I'm not trying to step on anyone's thing, but like, again, if you look at the way they're produced, they probably use a lot. They're heavily stunted. They have lots of explosions. There's an equipment. There's a technology.
Cost a lot of money to make.
They're high, which is fine. But just like someone who's drawn to that kind of movie is already being satisfied by technically, I would say a better product in Spider-Man or in whatever.
Plus, people see through they see through the astroturfing, which I'm saying is that people watch these movies and they watch the 5'1" chick beat up a 6'2" Navy SEAL, and they're like
talk about unrealistic body expectations.
That's the point. Well, remember, unrealistic body expectations only applies to women. Only women are allowed to complain about that. Men, there are no there are no body positive male models. Only
Rihanna just released a men's line of underwear. And she uses like a range of male men. It's interesting how often that
I guess dad bod is like a thing like that. So I correct myself on there, but in general,
but we don't talk about it the same way.
Yes, you don't talk about it the same way. And in these, my favorite, it's always that they're like, look at how they sexualize the women in these superhero movies. I'm like, the men are shirtless like the whole time.
Oh, see, what bothers me more is like, look at how they sexualize the women, but let's not talk about how they make men look like incompetent, backwards, can't survive without women. Like, it's a bad depiction on both of them. You're just insulting, you're valuing women for their bodies, and you're telling men that they are useless, basically.
Yep. That's it's one of those things where
no one is happy,
and no one's happy because no one likes to see useless and effeminate men, and nobody wants to see women that are being covered up like they're part of
like they have something to be ashamed of.
Yeah, like we almost covered it one day that the actress who plays from The Flash, the actress who plays Barry's Iris West, they wouldn't let her show her belly button. Like her belly on the show. I'm like, what is this, the 1950s? She's like a grown woman adult in a movie, in like a show about like really, it's the CW. They're all really attractive. That's literally the purpose of that network.
Yes.
So I think it's like they're literally becoming it's a new age of like Puritanism, where the women have to be covered up not because they believe in morals, but because they don't want men to be happy. Because that's the reason they do it.
Yeah,
they don't do it because they believe in the morality of the women being covered up. They do it because they want to make men unhappy.
Yeah. It's I actually am for, like, if you want to just modestly like have an excellent time, do whatever you need to. If you don't, like, that's fine, but
it's why they do it.
Being like, no, we have to cover her up because
the male gaze.
Otherwise we're overly we're sexualizing her and we're doing this for men. But then the opposite, like being like, no, she's empowered, let her be naked. Like, no, that's not empowering. Like, your motivation is important when you make decisions. This has nothing to do with Batman.
I was just saying,
is
all
fully
of this
clothed,
is yes. Well, I'm sure we'll see plenty of him.
Yeah. Okay. To answer your question earlier, do movies really need to be win and reward? Okay. What is happening? Win and reward if they have a public release? No, they don't have to. So, but quota, they said those movies have been completed even though they have not been released to general public. Producers hope to qualify for a nomination, so they make a film available to people who are nominating.
The Academy.
Yeah,
the Academy. Okay, so maybe
it doesn't need a theater release.
Nope.
To be
Maybe they just advertise to the people who are part of the.
I felt like at one point that was one of the controversies that Netflix had when they wanted consideration.
They wanted the Irishman to get. They wanted the Irishman to get some type of nomination for an award in the Academy. So it's not like it's a rule. It's just the Academy has their
ability to decide.
And so they would they would go against it. So.
Yeah. So I made sure to fact check myself, and they're saying all the same thing. They don't really need to be public.
Yep. So the Batman is still scheduled for March 4th of 2022, and my hope is that we do not see that one move out of the way, because that is one of the few that I'm of the superhero genre. Most of the movies I'm looking forward to this year aren't superhero movies, so we will see how that goes.
Ooh.
Would you be interested in seeing any of the Oscar movies that have been made? Like, did you see King Richard? Because I think that got a digital release.
I think
that's the Venus and Serena one, right?
The biopic, yeah.
Yes.
I think I passed by it watching the trailers for it. I would watch it because I really find Serena.
Yeah, you're a tennis fan.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I kind of feel bad because the number one tennis player for males, he can't go to Australia because COVID, because he doesn't have his passport, and they're like, we're not allowing you into Australia to play in the Open.
If you'd like to read about this, I'm going to direct you to my coverage of it on timcast.com.
Yep.
Perfect. That was beautiful. Speaking of, you called it a biopic.
Is that not the word?
I call it a biopic.
I like her words better.
Biopic sounds very like myopic.
I can't think of like which one I've heard, because I've heard it said both ways.
Yeah.
But am I wrong?
No, I don't. It's probably both.
My dad has well, it's very like Americanized now, but he's British, so sometimes I grew up not mispronouncing words. I would say them like with an American accent, but like the way my dad said them.
Sebastian, like instead of Sebastian.
Yeah, there's a couple different ones, but I now never know if I'm pronouncing things correctly.
Thanks for watching this clip, guys. If you want to see full episodes or follow us on social media, links are in the description below. Bye.
Bye.